The mission of the Peter Emily Foundation is to treat the oral disease of animals, captive animals, in sanctuary shelters and lesser zoos throughout the world, beginning in the United States and expanding into overseas.
These animals in shelters and sanctuaries all over the world, and no one takes care of them. There's probably 25,000 of them in the United States alone that have, they're in about 1,000 shelters plus or sanctuaries. And no one owns them. They don't have a patron to pay for their care like you would your dog or cat. And they're beset with dental disease, and they have barely enough money to feed them.
Oral disease can cause all sorts of much more complicated, much more serious health issues. Heart problems, kidney problems, liver problems. So let's say the veterinarian treats a broken leg. And that's wonderful. The broken leg heals, but you've got an abscess in the mouth, and the animal, if it goes untreated, the disease seeds to the heart or the liver, and the animal will die anyway.
My mission is to provide a better life for these animals in captivity. And it all comes from the mouth. As we said before, it all starts there. Everything comes to the mouth, into the world with their mouth open. Probably there's only a handful of veterinarians in the world that can do everything with all of the animals out there, because there's tigers, lions, I've treated bears, rhinoceros, elephants, whatever, they're down to the smallest little animals you've never heard of. But how can we get this treatment for these animals? Not only the ones in the zoo, as they said, were in captivity, but animals now that we're treating that we want to release back into the wild. We don't want them to remain in captivity if they could have their own life again. So this is what the mission is, just to treat those animals that no one else treats or knew much about.
Essentially, the first job is to teach the teachers, because right now we can count on one hand the number of people that can do every species or use their knowledge of multiple species to adapt to something they possibly haven't seen before.
When it comes to education, the problem is there's not much literature written. I can't think of hardly any that's written on hands-on how to do this. Most of the problems we have in veterinary medicine, human medicine, there's textbooks that describe a certain surgical procedure or dental procedure. There's not much of that out there in the exotics or in the small animals or in elephant dentistry or hippo dentistry. We don't see that. So it's got to be hands-on. Now these people are teachers in their own right because they conduct seminars, but the teachers have to be taught by other teachers how to do these other procedures. The problem is also that many of these shelters cannot recognize dental disease, and when their animals are down and ill and everything, they don't know what to do.
What we want to do is be able to educate the staff at these sanctuary shelters and zoos to be able to recognize oral problem as quickly as possible. But the real goal of the foundation is to teach people who are willing to commit to the foundation, such as Doctors Without Borders, to commit to missions several times a year where they will go to these sanctuary shelters and lesser zoos and treat a variety of oral problems.
These people have to be certified. We have people in the college now that will go to, will apply to go to these sanctuaries with us, and we charge them a tuition which goes to their educational requirements. And they pay for that to learn how to do this. And once they develop a certain expertise to do something, once they become qualified, do maybe just a root canal on primates and everything, then we will note that, and they would probably send them to a sanctuary that requires only this. But they have to continually advance in their education before they're able to do everything, because there's not many people that can do all of it. You know, there's a few of us, and that's about it. So we want them all to be able to do it, because it's all over the world. We're going to need them to do it in every corner of the world.
And there are 4 issues really facing the foundation: funding, teachers, students and practitioners, and missions. And the funding affects the other 3. And without the funding, you can't do the other 3.
If you multiply the numbers of practitioners that are needed, it's enormous. When you consider in the United States alone, with 1,000 shelters probably and sanctuaries, if you notify these shelters that we are available and say 500 of them say yes, come, and how many animals can you treat at that time? But you consider there's hundreds of them out there, and they'll list all of the things we need. So if you take that times 500, And you take them, when they get there, it's not only one visit to the shelter, then we have to repeat the visits. So you can see the numbers and multiplications we have of practitioners that need to be sent to these various missions. And the educational process, educating these that we have now so they can become educators in the future, to educate and to educate.
You need to get a perpetual source of funding. We're talking bequeaths, continuous corporate gifts, things like this, in order to ensure that funding is there to fulfill commitments that teachers or students and practitioners make or other organizations make to the foundation in order to achieve its mission in perpetuity.
And we talked about instrument and funding and the problems with funding. Each one of these packages that we send to these different shelters, it has to have not only x-ray equipment, but they have to have motorized equipment, and they have all kinds of hand instruments and surgical instruments. So we figure that each one of these packages will probably have to run maybe $30,000 for each package. And you multiply that times all of the zoos in the country, or all of the shelters in here in Brazil and everything, the cost is enormous. So not only we have to have proper education, but proper funding to process all of this instrumentation.
Because the goal is to have this go on even after Dr. Emily passes.
Our time span is limited, and I want to build up a foundation that is filled with new members, new people, younger people, that this goes on and in perpetuity, so that when animals come into a shelter, maybe being idealistic, they go through a dental examination and maybe we have people on board to do this. So they're cared for as well as your pets are cared for. So that the dogs and cats, they can get that. So we want to do the same thing for them. And this has to go on. We have to educate the veterinarian, we have to educate exactly to what they're going to run into, what species they're dealing with, how to treat these individual species. And once they're educated, they can pass this on from generation to generation. I'd love to have that legacy live on for the treatment of all these orphaned animals, and they receive the same care that all the animals receive.